The backstage area of the Hollywood martial arts event was buzzing with energy. Cameras flashed, fans whispered excitedly, and the air smelled faintly of sweat and anticipation. Among the crowd, Steven Seagal stood calm and composed, demonstrating a fluid Aikido move to a small group of admirers. His long hair flowed slightly as he executed a precise wrist lock, and his voice carried authority as he spoke about internal energy and the philosophy behind his moves. Across the room, Gene LeBell walked in with his characteristic confidence. Known as the godfather of grappling, Gene had a reputation for mastering every combat style imaginable, and he wasn't afraid to show it. Spotting Steven, Gene smirked. He strolled over, hands behind his back, scanning the display of theatrical flair. Internal energy, huh? Gene called out with a grin. You make it sound like magic. I thought we were here to see some real moves, not a movie script. The crowd turned. Some laughed nervously. Others leaned in, sensing the spark of tension. Steven's calm expression flickered for a moment, his eyes narrowing just slightly. It's more than a script, Steven replied smoothly. It's about understanding the unseen force that guides your technique. Gene chuckled, shaking his head. Force, unseen, sounds fancy, but let's see if it works when someone actually tests it. He winked at a few onlookers. The subtle challenge hung in the air like a lightning bolt waiting to strike. Steven, ever the cool professional, didn't flinch. If you think you can challenge me, be my guest, he said, his voice low but steady. The crowd gasped. A few camera lenses zoomed in, anticipating what could only be described as a showdown between two legends. Onlookers whispered among themselves, "This is insane. Gene LeBell versus Steven Seagal? What will happen next?" Gene leaned slightly forward, a playful grin on his face. He wasn't intimidated. In fact, the more confident Steven appeared, the more he felt the thrill of the moment. He was about to show everyone why he was called a master of grappling, even if it meant teasing a man who had cultivated an aura of near-mystical martial arts prowess. And then, with a mischievous glint in his eye, Gene stepped a little closer. "All right, Steven, let's see what all this so-called internal energy really does. Show me." Every eye in the room focused on the two men. The tension was electric. No one knew what would happen next, but no one expected what Gene would do next. The room was still buzzing from the playful but sharp exchange between Gene LeBell and Steven Seagal. Cameras were trained on the two men as whispers spread among the crowd. This is about to get real. Fans, journalists, and martial arts enthusiasts leaned in, their phones raised to capture every moment. Steven took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on Gene. "You don't understand what it takes to master Aikido," he said, his voice calm but firm. "It's not just about strength. It's about balance, timing, and controlling the flow of energy." Gene tilted his head and laughed. "Balance, timing, controlling energy? Buddy, I've been throwing people twice your size before breakfast. Let's see if your fancy energy can handle reality." His grin widened as he squared his shoulders, clearly enjoying the verbal sparring. A few spectators exchanged nervous glances. The tension in the room was palpable. Steven moved fluidly, demonstrating a few precise wrist and arm techniques. Gene watched carefully, nodding subtly, absorbing every movement. He wasn't dismissive, he was calculating. Every master has a plan, and Gene's mind was already racing. "You see," Steven continued, "it's not about brute force. You must guide your opponent's energy and use it against them. That's how you dominate without hurting yourself." Gene chuckled again, this time more confidently. "I get it. You talk a good game. But let's see if you can back it up when someone pushes back." A hush fell over the crowd as Gene took a subtle step closer, his hands relaxed but ready. Steven's jaw tightened slightly, and for the first time, the calm aura he carried seemed to face a real challenge. The crowd leaned in. Cameras zoomed. You could almost feel the electricity in the air. A single misstep here could change everything. Gene smirked at the reporters filming, then turned back to Steven. "If you really believe in all that energy stuff, why don't we put it to the test? Right here, right now." Steven's expression didn't change, but his eyes narrowed, the kind of steely focus only a seasoned martial artist could hold. "Very well," he said. "But remember, I don't play for theatrics. I play for mastery." The two men faced each other in the small, cleared area backstage. Everyone around them instinctively stepped back to give space. The anticipation was overwhelming. Fans held their breath, and several whispered excitedly, "This is history in the making." Two legends, head-to-head. Gene broke the silence with a playful jab. "Just so we're clear, I'm not impressed by talk. I'm impressed by results." Steven responded with a calm smile. "Then you'll see." Gene's mind raced as he analyzed Steven's posture, every slight movement, every shift in weight. "All right, let's see what you've got," he said quietly, almost to himself. The thrill of facing a rival who matched his confidence was intoxicating. The crowd, sensing the tension, couldn't resist commenting live. Phones streamed, social media buzzed, and everyone was caught up in the suspense. A few daring spectators shouted from the sidelines, "Team Seagal! Team LeBell!" The room was alive with energy. Which city and country are you watching from? Tell us in the comments. And tell us, whose style looks more dangerous? Team Seagal or Team LeBell? Gene, ever the showman, leaned slightly forward, feigning casualness. Remember, it's not just about who strikes first. It's about who controls the moment. Steven's calm demeanor didn't waver, but a faint glimmer of respect appeared in his eyes. Gene was clearly no ordinary challenger. He could feel the weight of Gene's experience, the kind that only decades of real fighting could give. They circled each other slowly, testing distance and reaction. Every subtle movement spoke volumes. The tiniest shift in stance, the almost imperceptible flick of a wrist. The crowd was silent, watching like hawks, waiting for the first strike. Gene's grin widened, eyes twinkling with mischief. "Come on, Steven. Don't just stand there talking. Show me what you've got." Steven's lips curved into a faint smile. "Patience is part of mastery. You'll see soon enough." The backstage area had transformed from a casual demonstration zone into an arena of tension. Everyone could feel that this was more than a playful sparring session. It was a battle of egos, skill, and reputation. And in the middle of it all, the world's eyes were on two martial arts legends, wondering what would happen next. The room had fallen silent. Every camera, every phone, every eye was fixed on the two legends facing off. Gene LeBell and Steven Seagal weren't just standing. They were circling each other, subtle shifts in weight, tiny adjustments in stance, testing timing and balance. The energy in the room was electric, like a storm about to break. Steven moved first, executing a slow, precise step forward, demonstrating a small Aikido technique aimed at Gene's wrist. His motion was smooth, calculated, and deceptively powerful. The crowd murmured in awe. His technique looked effortless. Gene's eyes narrowed, but his smile never wavered. He allowed Steven to make the first move, letting the energy flow, observing every micro-adjustment. Then, in one fluid motion, Gene countered, not with brute strength, but with a swift, almost playful twist that sent Steven slightly off balance. The gasps were instantaneous. The spectators had expected theatrics, but the precision and speed of Gene's response caught everyone off guard. "Whoa!" someone shouted from the back. Cameras zoomed in, capturing every flick of the wrist, every subtle shift in footing. Steven adjusted immediately, his stance firming. "Interesting," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. His calm exterior had cracked just slightly. He had underestimated Gene's reflexes. Gene leaned closer, joking but serious. "Not bad, but you're going to have to do better than that if you want to impress me." A nervous laugh went through the crowd, but the tension was far from gone. The air smelled faintly of sweat and anticipation. Every spectator instinctively held their breath, waiting for the next move. Steven decided to escalate. With a sudden, fluid motion, he attempted a more aggressive Aikido wrist lock. Gene, reading the movement like an open book, countered with a judo maneuver, using Steven's momentum against him. The two men were now fully engaged, their movements precise, almost like a deadly dance. The crowd's whispers rose into audible excitement. "Did you see that?" one fan shouted. "He just flipped him." Another camera captured the moment from above, two legends moving faster than the eye could follow, their skill on full display. Even Steven's closest supporters couldn't hide their surprise. Gene's ability to stay calm under pressure and turn the tables so quickly had shifted the dynamic completely. It was no longer just a demonstration. It was a masterclass in control, timing, and experience. If you were there, who would you support? Team Gene or Team Steven? Write it in the comments now. Steven, realizing the crowd was visibly impressed, smiled faintly, maintaining his composure. He wasn't angry, he was intrigued. This was a worthy challenge. Every move Gene made was a lesson, a test, and a statement of decades of mastery. Gene, sensing the shift in energy, decided to push the pace. He feinted a subtle movement toward Steven's side, then executed a quick spin, almost like a playful jest, that left Steven momentarily off balance. The crowd erupted in cheers, phones flashing everywhere. "You're fast," Steven admitted, his tone calm, almost approving. "But speed alone won't win this." "Of course not," Gene replied, smirking. "It's about timing, control, and knowing when to strike. Something you might appreciate, if you pay attention." The room felt smaller somehow, condensed by the sheer focus of the two men. Each movement, each micro-adjustment, seemed magnified in the eyes of everyone watching. For every strike, there was a counter. For every feint, a parry. The audience could feel the intellectual battle behind the physical one, each man reading the other's mind as much as his body. Then came the moment that sent another wave of excitement through the room. Gene executed a sudden judo throw, fictionally dramatized but precise in narrative impact, that caught Steven completely off guard. The crowd gasped. Cameras captured the move from multiple angles. Even Steven's face betrayed a flash of surprise and respect. The two men separated slightly, both breathing calmly, but with the tension still thick in the air. Gene grinned at the spectators. "Not bad, huh? Remember, it's all fun until someone underestimates experience." Steven nodded, acknowledging the point without losing dignity. "I see your skill. You've earned your respect. But the game isn't over yet." The spectators, now fully invested, leaned forward. Phones, cameras, and whispers filled the room. Everyone could feel the balance of power shifting back and forth, and it was impossible to predict who would dominate the next move. The moment was electric, part martial arts lesson, part drama, part spectacle. Gene and Steven had created an environment where skill, strategy, and pride collided, and no one could look away. The room was alive with a mix of tension and disbelief. Spectators had stopped breathing in unison, mesmerized by the fluid exchange between Gene LeBell and Steven Seagal. Every movement, every subtle counter, every feint was scrutinized, replayed in the minds of the audience as if they were watching a live chess match, but with bodies instead of pieces. Gene, always the showman, moved with ease and confidence. He circled Steven lightly, studying every micro-expression, every flicker of muscle. "You've got good technique," Gene said with a smile. "But there's more to this than just moves. It's about control, timing, and reading your opponent." Steven didn't flinch. "I understand. But experience isn't everything," he replied, his voice calm, yet carrying the authority of someone who had spent decades mastering Aikido. "Sometimes, instinct and energy can overcome skill." Gene chuckled. "Instinct, huh? Let's see how that works against 40 years of professional grappling." The spectators leaned closer. Phones were raised high, recording every second. Social media was already buzzing, some attendees uploading clips as they streamed live. Excitement was contagious. No one had ever seen a display like this. Two living legends, testing each other in real time, without ego overpowering skill. From the back of the crowd, a young martial arts enthusiast whispered to his friend, "Is that really Gene LeBell, the godfather of grappling?" His friend's eyes widened. "No way, and Steven Seagal? This is insane." The whisper spread like wildfire. Soon, everyone was murmuring, "It's Gene LeBell, and that's Steven Seagal." The realization added another layer to the tension. These weren't just skilled martial artists. These were icons, legends whose reputations had been built over decades. People had watched their movies, studied their techniques, and admired them from afar. And now, they were witnessing a rare, unfiltered clash of skill and experience. Steven's movements became sharper, more deliberate. Every wrist lock, every step, every slight shift was met with an equally precise counter from Gene. The audience gasped repeatedly. Even the most experienced martial artists in the room were whispering in awe. "I've never seen anyone move like that. Not even in the movies." Gene, noticing the rising whispers of recognition, kept his playful grin but didn't let the acknowledgement distract him. Fame was irrelevant here. Skill and strategy were the only currency. You've got a good grasp of Aikido, he said casually. But let's see if you can handle someone who doesn't play by the rules of Hollywood choreography. Steven smirked faintly, but there was a flicker of realization in his eyes. He had underestimated Gene's versatility and unpredictability. Every attempt to leverage his signature techniques was being countered with smooth, effortless grace. The crowd became more vocal. Some shouted encouragement. "Go, Gene!" Others called for Steven. Cameras clicked, capturing every intricate movement. The atmosphere was thick with suspense. The whispers of recognition had turned into audible awe. A few attendees even began comparing the two in hushed debates. "Gene's speed is unbelievable," one said. "But Steven's precision is unmatched," another countered. The clash of skill had sparked both admiration and debate, an organic engagement that no staged demonstration could ever replicate. Gene, sensing the perfect moment for subtle dominance, executed a minor but flashy counter that left Steven off balance for a fraction of a second. The crowd erupted in excitement. "Did you see that?" someone shouted. "That was insane." Steven, maintaining his composure, quickly regained footing. But the flicker of surprise lingered. Even the calm, confident aura he usually projected had been punctured. Gene's decades of experience and fearless approach were undeniable. The whispers grew louder. "That's Gene LeBell, and he's schooling Steven Seagal." People began filming on multiple devices, replaying the sequence in slow motion. The energy in the room was electric. Everybody could feel they were witnessing something historic. Gene glanced at Steven, a twinkle of mischief and respect in his eyes. "You're holding up well," he said. "But don't forget, experience wins when skill meets patience." Steven nodded, acknowledging Gene's point, but he didn't break his focus. The battle was far from over. Both men paused for a fraction of a second, breathing evenly, eyes locked. The crowd waited, sensing that the next exchange could be even more dramatic than the first. What happened next changed the entire dynamic, and no one in the room could believe it. The tension in the room had reached a fever pitch. Cameras and phones hovered like hawks, capturing every subtle movement as Gene LeBell and Steven Seagal circled each other. The air smelled faintly of sweat, anticipation, and adrenaline. Spectators were silent, save for the occasional whisper. "Did you see that counter?" Steven's composure was still impressive, but there was a subtle shift. Gene's counters had become faster, sharper, almost instinctive. Every attempt by Steven to leverage his Aikido finesse was anticipated, neutralized, and sometimes reversed with smooth precision. The crowd could see the shift in momentum. Gene was now setting the pace, dictating the rhythm of the duel. "You're strong," Gene said lightly, almost conversationally. "But strength without adaptability can only get you so far." Steven's eyes flickered, just for a moment. He had trained for decades, mastered his craft, and yet Gene's decades of grappling experience were proving to be an unexpected challenge. "Adaptability isn't enough," Steven replied, calm but measured. "Timing and technique are everything." Gene smiled. "I agree, but let's see how your timing handles someone who's lived in the ring and on the mat for decades longer than you." With that, Gene launched a feint, a playful, teasing motion meant to bait Steven into committing to a move. Steven reacted, his Aikido instinct kicking in. But Gene didn't just counter. He reversed the movement, leveraging Steven's own energy to throw him slightly off balance. The crowd gasped. Phones flashed. Even seasoned martial artists in the audience whispered, "That's textbook skill." Gene leaned in slightly, his voice playful but firm. "See, it's not just about the first move. It's about controlling the sequence. Every action has a reaction." Steven blinked. He had been caught, momentarily. His usually flawless calm showed a crack of surprise. Gene's speed, intuition, and confidence had taken the upper hand, if only for a fraction of a second. The audience erupted into murmurs and soft cheers. "Did you see that?" a young fan whispered. Gene just turned it around like it was nothing. Gene, sensing the perfect moment, increased the pace. He executed a series of counters that were almost imperceptible at first, small shifts in grip, a twist of the wrist, a slight nudge of the shoulder. Each movement seemed casual, effortless, and yet precise enough to unbalance Steven incrementally. The crowd held its breath. Some whispered encouragement. "Go, Gene." Others were cheering for Steven. "Don't let him take over." The energy was electric, and the tension palpable. Steven, realizing the audience was beginning to favor Gene, attempted a more aggressive Aikido maneuver. He moved faster this time, fluid and confident, trying to regain control of the dynamic. But Gene anticipated the move. With a quick sidestep and a smooth judo sweep, Gene redirected Steven's momentum. The maneuver wasn't forceful, just perfectly timed, but it left Steven slightly off balance once more. "Nice try," Gene said, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. But experience sees what's coming before it happens. Even Steven couldn't hide his admiration. Though the competitive fire was still burning in his eyes, he nodded in respect. The audience sensed the subtle shift. Gene's mastery wasn't just technical, it was psychological. He wasn't trying to humiliate Steven. He was demonstrating complete control, humility, and confidence all at once. The tension escalated further when Gene executed another small, fluid maneuver. Steven, momentarily caught off guard, stumbled slightly, just enough for the audience to erupt into excitement. People gasped, clapped, and whispered, capturing every angle on their phones. Social media streams were already lighting up with clips. Gene LeBell just schooled Steven Seagal. Unbelievable. Gene paused, stepping back slightly, allowing Steven to regain his composure. He smiled at the crowd, a mix of humility and triumph on his face. "Martial arts isn't about looking strong," Gene said. "It's about being prepared, aware, and knowing how to respond in any situation." Steven, breathing steadily now, nodded. There was no anger in his expression, only a newfound respect. He understood that Gene wasn't trying to humiliate him. He was showing what true mastery looked like. The room erupted in cheers, applause, and camera flashes. Fans whispered excitedly, "This is insane. Gene just dominated with skill and brains, not brute force." And then, in the next moment, something happened that no one in the room saw coming. The atmosphere backstage had transformed into something electric, almost surreal. Every spectator, from seasoned martial artists to casual fans, was frozen in anticipation. Phones hovered, cameras zoomed in, and even the crew behind the scenes had stopped moving. The two martial arts legends, Gene LeBell and Steven Seagal, stood facing each other, sweat glistening on their brows, eyes locked in mutual respect but fierce determination. Gene LeBell, smiling subtly, stepped slightly closer. He had been observing Steven's movements for minutes, reading every micro-shift, every subtle adjustment of balance and energy. His decades of experience allowed him to anticipate, not react, but predict. Steven, maintaining his calm composure, was still a formidable force. His Aikido moves were smooth, fluid, almost hypnotic. Yet there was a flicker of caution in his eyes, a realization that Gene was no ordinary opponent. The shift in momentum had become undeniable. Gene was setting the pace now. Then, without warning, Gene executed a sudden feint. At first, it seemed casual, almost playful, just a small step forward, a twist of the wrist. But in the next heartbeat, he pivoted, used Steven's forward motion against him, and in one seamless judo maneuver, lifted Steven slightly off balance and guided him to a controlled kneel. The crowd gasped so loudly it seemed the room itself had reacted. Cameras flashed like lightning. "Did he just?" whispered one fan, eyes wide. Another shouted, "No way. Gene just moved him like he weighed nothing." Steven, ever composed, barely flinched but blinked in surprise. Even the calm, stoic aura he usually exuded couldn't mask the brief astonishment on his face. For a moment, the entire backstage seemed to hold its collective breath, realizing the magnitude of what had just happened. Gene didn't press the advantage. He stood upright, hands relaxed, a twinkle of mischief and respect in his eyes. "It's not about overpowering your opponent," he said, voice calm but carrying authority. "It's about control, timing, and knowing exactly when and how to act. Strength without understanding is wasted energy." The crowd erupted into applause and cheers. Phones were recording every angle, every micro-expression. Social media notifications were already lighting up. Clips of the maneuver were being shared, tagged, and commented on instantly. Gene LeBell just schooled Steven Seagal. Unreal. Even Steven nodded, a smile breaking across his usually serious expression. "Well played," he admitted quietly, acknowledging Gene's skill without any hint of bitterness. "I didn't see that coming. You're a master, Gene." Gene, ever the gracious competitor, extended a hand. Steven shook it firmly, and in that handshake, the room sensed something more than victory. It was mutual respect, the acknowledgement of mastery earned through decades of dedication. Spectators could hardly believe what they had just witnessed. Many whispered in awe, "I've never seen anything like this in my life." Others debated quietly, comparing the styles. That move was pure judo genius. Steven's aikido was amazing too, but Gene anticipated it perfectly. The energy in the room shifted. What had started as a playful confrontation had transformed into a historic display of skill, strategy, and respect. Everyone realized they were witnessing something rare, the collision of two martial arts legends, one teaching through action, the other learning through humility and observation. What do you think Steven did next? Drop your guess in the comments. And if you were there, who would you want to win? Team Gene or Team Steven? Gene, sensing the perfect moment for closure, bowed slightly, a gesture of respect. Steven responded in kind. The crowd erupted again, not just in applause, but in awe of the sportsmanship and mastery displayed before them. Even the journalists and camera crew, trained to remain neutral, whispered excitedly among themselves. "This will go viral for sure," one muttered. "People are going to watch this clip 100 times and still be amazed." Gene turned to Steven one last time. "Remember," he said, voice calm but firm, "martial arts is as much about the mind as it is about the body. Respect and timing are everything." Steven nodded. "And humility," he added. "You've reminded me of that today." The crowd, electrified by what they had seen, continued to cheer, capturing the moment from every angle. Social media clips spread instantly, the hashtags trending within minutes. Hashtag Gene vs. Seagal, hashtag martial arts legend, hashtag respect and skill. For those watching, it was more than just a demonstration. It was a lesson in mastery, humility, and the beauty of martial arts. A story that would be remembered, discussed, and shared for years to come. The room was still buzzing from the electrifying showdown between Gene LeBell and Steven Seagal. Cameras had captured every angle, phones were flooded with clips, and the whispers of awe had turned into loud discussions. Social media exploded within minutes. Fans uploaded footage to every platform imaginable, hashtags trending globally, hashtag Gene vs. Seagal, hashtag martial arts legends, hashtag respect and skill. Gene leaned back slightly, a relaxed grin on his face. He had shown his mastery, but he hadn't needed to humiliate Steven to prove it. The room felt lighter now, filled with admiration, respect, and the thrill of witnessing something historic. Steven, for his part, stood tall, still composed but undeniably impressed. He adjusted his jacket, offered a calm nod, and extended his hand once more. Gene shook it firmly, both men smiling subtly, acknowledging not just each other's skill, but the decades of discipline, sweat, and dedication that had brought them to this rare moment. The crowd erupted in applause again, some whistling, some cheering. Phones captured every motion. Clips were shared instantly online, and by the next hour, millions of fans worldwide had seen the footage. Comments poured in from martial artists, actors, fans, and celebrities. "Unbelievable. Two legends in action. Gene's judo mastery is unmatched, and Steven's aikido is beautiful. This is how true martial artists show respect through skill." Even casual viewers, unfamiliar with the techniques, were enthralled. The story wasn't just about a duel. It was about experience versus instinct, preparation versus energy, and, most importantly, mutual respect. People were inspired by the calm and measured way Gene handled the situation and the dignified manner in which Steven responded. Journalists immediately started crafting headlines. Gene LeBell schools Steven Seagal in a historic display of skill and respect, and martial arts legends show true mastery and humility on camera. The clips went viral on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, trending globally within hours. Memes, reaction videos, and analysis clips began to flood the platforms, dissecting every movement, every subtle counter, every twist and pivot. Gene turned to the crowd, raising a hand in a casual wave. "Martial arts isn't about looking strong or proving who's better," he said, his voice carrying clearly over the cheers. "It's about skill, discipline, and respect. Every move matters. Every action has a consequence. And humility is as important as strength. Steven, standing beside him, nodded in agreement. You've reminded everyone here why martial arts is a lifelong journey. It's about learning, adapting, and respecting your opponent, no matter who they are. The crowd cheered again, some holding up signs. Respect. Legends. Team Gene. The energy in the room was infectious. People weren't just watching, they were inspired. Many would go home that evening thinking about discipline, strategy, and the power of humility. Social media comments poured in from around the globe. Watching from Tokyo, this is incredible. From New York City, I've never seen a demonstration like this. Team Gene for life. But Steven's calm and skill are unmatched too. Gene and Steven exchanged one final glance, a silent acknowledgement that this moment would be remembered for decades. It wasn't just a fight or demonstration. It was a lesson in mastery, patience, and respect, captured forever for the world to see. If you believe martial arts is about skill, respect, and humility, type respect in the comments below. Share this video with friends who love martial arts or anyone who needs inspiration from true masters. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories of courage, skill, and legendary moments. As the crowd slowly dispersed, the energy lingered. Phones kept recording, viewers kept commenting, and the story began its unstoppable journey across the internet. The duel had ended, but its impact was only beginning. Gene walked off the stage, smiling, giving a casual wave to the remaining audience. Steven followed, calm and composed, already planning his next move in his own mind, perhaps with a newfound appreciation for the wisdom and experience of a true master. That day, the world witnessed not just a clash of two martial arts legends, but the power of skill, humility, and respect, the timeless principles that define true mastery.